I'm going to show you a 2010 thriller crime film called 13. Vincent is holding a gun to a man's head in a building where a lot of money is exchanged under a strange light bulb while the man points his own gun at him. He recalls how this all started as Vince waits for the right time to shoot. 4 days earlier, Vince, his mother, and his sisters in Ohio agree to sell their house to pay for his father's hospital bills. He had been in the hospital for a while due to an accident. As an electrician, Vince sees his father every day before going to work. Today's client is Mr. Harrison, who has received a cryptic letter but is unaware that a police officer is parked across the street taking pictures of him. Vince overhears him saying that the letter will bring him a lot of money when he tells his girlfriend about it. When Vince returns home later that day to celebrate his youngest sister's birthday, he is amused by her desire to own a lamb. In the meantime, on the other side of the country, Jasper Baggies meets shady individuals who lend him $2 million and expect him to repay them in 3 days with $3 million. When Vince goes to see his dad the next day at the hospital, the doctor tells him that he will need another operation, which will obviously make the debt worse. After that, Vince goes back to work at Mr. Harrison's and overhears him telling a friend that this special job will pay him a lot in 1 day. He used to work the same position and was lucky enough to get it, but the memories haunt him. Mr. Harrison then goes to his room after his friend has left, hoping to have a good time, but he accidentally overdoses and dies. Vince is permitted to leave at some point after the important questions have been asked by the police. But before he leaves, he goes to Mr. Harrison's desk and steals the enigmatic envelope that contains a CPS receipt for pickup and a train ticket for New York. Vincent goes to the post office and asks the clerk for his ID. In return, he gets a package that includes a phone, $500, a key, a letter with a spider logo, and instructions stating that he should use the money for the hotel in New York and that he can only use the phone provided, he can't take his own. He will receive additional instructions later. When Mr. Harrison's girlfriend tells the police about the missing envelope, they find Vince's name on the list of people who picked up Harrison's package at the post office. They send this information to Detective Mullane, who orders them to follow Vince around and has been looking into the case behind those envelopes. Unaware that a police officer is following him, Vince dons his finest suit the following day and travels to New York by train. He follows the directions to get to the big city and stays in the hotel. Later that night, in the middle of the night, he gets a call on his new phone. Vince receives new instructions and pretends to be Harrison. The next day, he follows them exactly. After using the key to open a P.O. box at the Postnet store near Grand Central, he discovers a new envelope containing yet another train ticket, a small cork piece with the number 13 on it, and even more instructions. He has a ticket for Macomb, but he has to get off at a different stop first. Later on the train, the inspector asks Vince for his ticket and tells the police that Vince is going to Macomb. He does, however, manage to gain a few minutes of advantage over the police because he gets off earlier. The next thing to do is to take a taxi to the town's outskirts, where another car appears after the taxi has left. Jack is the driver, and he gives Vince a cork with the number 13 on it. Jack calls him over after Vince displays his own, picks up the phone, and drives Vince away. After asking the taxi driver to take them there, Mullane and the police arrive seconds later, but they are too late because there are no signs for them to follow. After that, Vince is taken by Jack to an old cabin in the middle of the forest. Vince receives new plain clothes from 2 additional men who inspect his old ones to ensure that he has not concealed anything. They go so far as to remove his shoes' heels. After that, Vince is taken to a different location, this time a huge mansion inhabited by wealthy people. Joe, Vince's patron, clearly recognizes him as Harrison there. Joe knows he has no choice but to let Vince play if he doesn't want to get in trouble with the other customers. Vince explains that Harrison has passed away and that he has taken his place. While this is going on, a lot of high-stakes wagers are taking place downstairs. Joe wagers on Vince, who has been assigned number 13, and Jasper arrives and wagers on the participant he patronizes, number 6. It turns out that the competition that everyone is betting on is Russian roulette. Vince is given a gun and is required to stand in a circle with the other participants, all of whom are wearing numbers emblazoned black t-shirts. Each man is given 1 bullet, and once their barrels have rolled, they are required to point their gun at the person in front of them while it is pointed at them from behind. After that, they need to wait for the light bulb with the spider logo to turn on before firing. The winner advances to the following round. Jack is needed to help Vince load his gun because he is extremely nervous. A few men pass away when the light bulb finally goes off, but the game isn't over yet. Vince has not fired his weapon. Vince gathers all of his strength and finally fires his gun. Thankfully, the person in front of him survives. Security comes over and threatens him with being shot as well if he doesn't follow the rules. Joe has a private conversation with Vince after the first round and tells him to be more mature. Jack offers Vince some morphine, which Vince declines, and Joe also begins taking bets from patrons who have lost men. In the meantime, participant 17 Patrick Jefferson talks to Jimmy, his patron, and promises to pay him 50 times more if he gets him out of here. Jefferson tells Jimmy his story because Jimmy doesn't understand why Jefferson is participating in such a competition when he has so much money. He was incarcerated until one night when they forced him to dress up and locked him up in a box shipped to this mansion. Jimmy is unmoved by this account and states that he cannot assist Jefferson, despite the fact that he spent the entire 2 days in the box. Jasper is likewise getting a few additional wagers on his member, who is his sibling Ronald Lynn Baggies. Ronald had been in a mental institution up until very recently, but Jasper took him out so that he could play for him. The second round begins, and each gun will contain 2 rounds this time. Vince is lucky to survive the half-death of the circle. The man behind him even ran out of time to fire. When number 16 suddenly stands up again, everyone is taken aback. However, after the doctor examines his injuries and determines that he is unable to continue, security shoots him dead. Member number 11, Hans, goes off the rails mentally, so his supporter Schlondorf attempts to quiet him down with an inspirational discourse, yet it isn't extremely useful. Jimmy hears from Jefferson once more, learning more about his past. He was sentenced for robbing a truck, but he kept the money safe before he was caught. Jefferson wants Jimmy to find the money with a map he just drew and will keep in his pocket if he loses the competition. If Jimmy accepts the deal and sends the other half to Jefferson's son, who is also in jail, he can keep half of the money. Jasper is having his own flashbacks as he places more bets. Ronald stopped taking his medication when he got his brother out of the mental institution because he said he felt better without it. Presently, nonetheless, he doesn't look so well. Jasper has to stop Ronald from making a scene when he throws an ashtray at Vince's head and draws a number and finds out that Ronald will be pointing to 13. As the third round gets underway, the participants are clearly feeling the strain. To calm Hans down and get him to the game, morphine is given to him, and number 3 needs a chair to play. Ronald causes Vince to push him and even slap him, but the host stops the situation before it gets out of hand. Each player will have 3 bullets during this round. The players perform the usual actions and fire, killing only 5 of them. Ronald, number 3, Vince, Jefferson, and number 9. This implies the opposition can enter the last phase of the game. The battle. 2 black and 3 white wrapped balls have been placed on the table. The remaining 5 players' patrons will each select a ball. The 2 players who choose the black balls will participate in the final duel, while the other 3 players are free to leave. Vince will oppose Ronald because Jasper and Joe take the black ones. Jasper, the more experienced player, receives the majority of the new bets. However, Joe is successful in persuading Schlondorf to place a wager on Vince because their odds are 5-1, which amounts to significantly more money. Jimmy illuminates Jefferson can gather his cash and go. But Jimmy surprises Jefferson from behind and tries to kill him when he gets distracted while changing into his normal clothes. Fortunately, security locates them before the worst happens, reminding Jimmy survivors that they cannot be hurt. As he takes out the blank piece of paper he had in his pocket, Jefferson makes fun of Jimmy's belief in fairy tales and curses his name. Before he finishes changing Jimmy and the guard, Jefferson reveals that everything was a ruse. He still had the map on him and proceeded to burn it before finally leaving. The blank paper had been a decoy. Ronald insults Jasper and snaps at him before the final round begins, requesting his share of the money this time. He is aware that Jasper used the money their parents gave him to care for him to put him in a mental institution. He only took him out to bring him to the game and never shared the money he won. As the final duel approaches, we return to the story's beginning, and each player is given 3 bullets. While pointing their guns, Vince and Ronald look directly at each other, but neither of them falls when they fire. A fortunate round for the following attempt, an additional shot is added, and this time Ronald kicks the bucket, meaning Vince has won the opposition. Schlondorf is happy to have placed such a risky bet, and Jasper is sad to have lost his brother. Vince, on the other hand, is the one who is feeling the worst because he has to deal with this death on his own. The man who pays Vince calls him lucky because Ronald had previously won all of his duels, and the final prize he receives is $1,850,000. He is praised for his performance by Joe and Schlondorf, and they offer him a ride to the train station, which Vince pretends to accept. However, as he ascends to retrieve his belongings, he enters the participant-filled room and exits the mansion through the window. Jack is aware that he has left, but Joe does not seem to be bothered when he is informed. When Vince gets to the train station in the morning, the taxi driver who took him there the day before sees him and gives him bad news. The driver tells the police where Vince is by calling the police. Fortunately for him, Vince sees the squad cars show up from far off and conceals his cash sack inside a garbage bin before they get him. He is then taken to Mullane to be questioned. Vince makes up a story on the spot and pretends he doesn't know what he's talking about when the detective asks about the money. He explains that because they realized he wasn't Harrison, they dropped him in the middle of the forest to shoot him, but he ran away. As a result, he never made it to the competition. Vince shows Mullane his shoes as evidence, pretending that he had run so hard that the heels had fallen off. If Mullane never does catch these people, Vincent is willing to identify their faces. However, due to the fact that they had blindfolded him, he is unable to accompany the detective to the location where they dropped him off. Mullane has no choice but to let Vince go because he doesn't have any more evidence or clues to look for. Vince rushes back to the trash can after taking a second taxi to the station, but his bag is gone. However, he then notices that there are all trash bags at the building's back, indicating that they have been changed recently. Fortunately, Vince finds his money as he begins to open the bags. However, he is aware that he cannot risk it again. He therefore goes to the post office and deposits all of the cash in a box before sending it to his family via registered mail rather than carrying the bag. After that, he calls his mother to let her know about the package so that they can be certain that someone will be home tomorrow when the mailman comes, and then he takes the train to New York. Vince goes to the grocery store in the morning to buy some snacks after spending the night in a hotel. He finds a lamb plushie there that makes him think of his sister, and he ends up paying $100 for it because the clerk doesn't want to sell it. It's time to return to Ohio. Jasper follows Vince as he boards his final train and engages in conversation as if this were a perfectly normal circumstance. Jasper shoots Vince and steals the bag when the train reaches its first station. He runs away with the bag because he thinks the weight of the big plushie is the money. Vince swallows the receipt from the post office as he considers his family before passing away.